The dropship cut its engines 100 meters above the surface. Silence reigned. Dust coiled into the air, clinging to the hull like ash clings to bone. Commander Rhea Morgan dropped alone, a blur of matte black armor and coiled readiness. Her boots hit the cracked concrete with a muted thud. No welcome beacon. No patrol. Not even a goddamn bird in the sky. "Recon 1 to command," she said, voice calm over the encrypted line. "Dagon 3 base is dark. Proceeding in." The settlement was a skeleton, prefab walls scorched, gates bent inward as if something massive had punched through. A burned-out rover sat sideways, its tires melted into the dirt. No signs of a firefight. Just silence, and the faint static hiss of scorched electronics. Rhea advanced, pulse rifle drawn tight against her shoulder. Her HUD flickered with environmental data, oxygen acceptable, no biological signatures, radiation levels nominal. Visor filters dimmed automatically as she stepped into the dim main corridor of Outpost Dagon. The air was still. Too still. Bodies were scattered like discarded uniforms. The Terran uniforms were charred, most with clean plasma entry points in the chest or head, execution style. One leaned against the console, hand still clutching a blood-smeared photo of a child. Rhea's jaw tightened. She tapped her wrist pad, syncing with the outpost's data core. Access denied. Odd. Military cores always left the cache. She stepped deeper into the command hub. The air smelled of burned wiring and ozone. Her boots crunched over shattered glass and scorched polymer. The data station, what should have been the last fallback for any surviving crew, had been ripped open like a tin can. Delicate interface wiring was savagely torn, not disabled. This wasn't just an attack, she muttered. They didn't want a trace left. Behind her, something groaned. She whirled, gun ready. A man. Slumped against the wall, half buried in shadows. His face was burned, lips split and bleeding, but his eyes flickered open as she approached. The ragged remains of a Comtech uniform clung to him. "Easy," she said, kneeling. "I'm with command. Rado Division." He coughed, and it sounded wet. "Too late," he rasped. "They came cloaked, not scouts. A full unit. Wiped us out before we could warn." His eyes fluttered, then focused. "Don't let them send the signal. There." He didn't finish. Rhea's hand hovered over his pulse for a moment. Gone. Her expression hardened. If the Xal'tor had used a stealth squad here, it was a direct violation of the armistice. A declaration of war. She stood, scanning the walls again. Scorch marks tracked along the floor, almost too precise. Rhea followed them past the ruined mess hall to the entrance of the sub-level hangars. A boot print. Not human. She crouched beside it. For claws, wide stride, depth suggesting armored weight, definitely Xal'tor infantry. She triggered a scan and watched as the imprint glowed faintly. Fresh. Maybe less than an hour. "I'm not alone," she whispered. A flicker on her HUD, a movement at the far end of the corridor. She ducked into an access shaft without hesitation, closing the manual hatch behind her and killing her suit lights. In the pitch dark, she moved silently, memories of base blueprints guiding her through the maintenance tunnels. The shaft opened into a small observation room above the hangar. Through the one-way glass, she saw them. 3 Xal'tor soldiers in full adaptive combat armor were moving with clinical precision, scanning bodies and stripping the remaining tech. One carried a small spherical beacon, the kind used for interstellar signal bursts. Illegal for them to use inside Terran space. Then she saw him, taller than the others, adorned in red and silver armor. Not a grunt. An officer. Why the hell send a high-caste commander to clean up a dead outpost? Rhea murmured. The beacon blinked once. Her stomach dropped. They weren't just here to destroy the outpost. They were preparing a signal. A long-range mark to call reinforcements, or worse, initiate a planetary cleanse. A soft tone pinged on her HUD. Her suit had synced with a hidden surveillance cam still broadcasting. "Thank you, old tech," she muttered. The camera gave her a better angle, a countdown timer on the beacon. 13 minutes and 22 seconds, she had minutes. She scanned the hangar's secondary access routes. One duct, one fuel line, and one maintenance lift, all risky. She chose the duct. Crawling through the narrow shaft, she moved above the enemy, then dropped silently into the service corridor behind them. Pulling out a pulse grenade, she primed it for electromagnetic burst, not to kill, just to blind. She whispered to herself, "They'll learn today." She flung the grenade and ducked back behind cover. The blast was immediate, blue lightning arced across the room. Xal'tor soldiers screamed, their armor systems crackling as HUD shorted out. Rhea moved fast. In the confusion, she dashed toward the beacon, yanked the power cell free, and grabbed a data shard from the officer's gauntlet. He roared in his language, spinning to strike, but she was already vaulting up the fuel conduit. Plasma fire scorched the walls behind her as she slipped into the vertical shaft and sealed it shut with a heat weld from her wrist torch. She didn't stop moving until she was 3 levels up and breathing hard behind a sealed bulkhead. She looked at the data shard in her glove. Proof. And maybe more. "Recon 1 to command," she whispered again. Static. No response. She was cut off. She leaned against the cold wall, staring into the dark. They hadn't just attacked a human outpost. They'd sent an elite team to clean the mess before anyone noticed. And now, they knew someone had noticed. Her. And she'd just made their worst mistake worse. Rhea didn't look back as she slipped through the underground access tunnel, the wall she'd welded shut still glowing faintly behind her. Her pulse was steady, her thoughts clear. She'd disrupted their signal, killed one of their elite, and stolen intel from under their snouts. But the game wasn't over. It was just changing. She navigated the rusted maintenance corridor using her helmet's low-light mode, the silence broken only by the crunch of her boots on old dust. This part of Dagon 3's infrastructure, abandoned during budget cuts, was perfect for flanking. The upper levels were gridlocked by Xal'tor patrols, but down here? She was a ghost. She tapped her wrist console and pulled up a partial layout from corrupted archives. The old power relays still ran beneath the hangars, and she could reach the auxiliary comms room if she moved fast. If she could send even a fragment of what she'd found, just a single image from the data shard, Command would have proof of Xal'tor treaty violations. That meant war, yes, but also clarity. And leverage. Rhea quickened her pace. Up above, in the main facility, the surviving Xal'tor warriors regrouped. Officer Valcor, the one Rhea had marked with her blade but hadn't finished, paced before the charred beacon, his mandibles twitching in anger. "The human is not standard military," he growled in Xal'tor tongue. "She knew our protocols." The soldier beside him, shorter and more cautious, nodded. "She planted a logic disruptor. Primitive tech, but precise." The beacon screamed nonsense. Valcor's eyes narrowed. "Then we changed tactics. Split search teams. Find her." Rhea climbed a corroded ladder, reached a sealed door, and pried it open with her knife and a grunt. The auxiliary comms room greeted her with stale air and flickering yellow lights. She locked the door behind her and knelt beside the main console. "Come on, old girl," she murmured. "Talk to me." The console beeped uncertainly, powering up with a low hum. The interface was clunky, older than her, but functional. She slid the data shard into the port and started extraction. Lines of alien script flooded the screen. Names, coordinates, asset lists, far more than she expected. This wasn't just a hit list for Dagon 3. It was an operations network, mapping other human outposts, supply routes, even Earth's deep relay buoys. She swore under her breath. "You weren't cleaning up," she muttered. "You were staging something big." Footsteps echoed down the hall. Heavy, deliberate. Closer. Rhea shut off the screen, yanked the shard, and flicked the power to emergency mode. Her options were thin, No vent access, no second exit, no cover. Her eyes fell on a storage locker. Cramped. Barely human-sized. She hesitated, then climbed in, pulling the door shut just as the outer door hissed open. The locker stank of oil and mildew. Through a crack in the door, she watched two Xal'tor enter. They fanned out, scanning, their language short and clipped. One moved to the console. Recently active, he growled. But nothing transmitted. The other circled the room slowly. His mandibles clicked. She's close. Rhea's pulse slowed. She counted seconds. If she stayed still. The locker door ripped open. The first Xal'tor blinked in surprise, and caught a boot to the throat. Rhea exploded out, knife flashing. She plunged the blade into the alien's chest, twisted, then dropped as plasma fire scorched the air where her head had been. She rolled, grabbed the fallen weapon, and fired. 2 clean shots. One hit the second soldier's thigh, the other his neck. He collapsed, choking. She snatched her knife, wiped it clean, and didn't waste a glance. Back in the tunnels, she moved quickly now. The entire base would be alerted. The beacon was destroyed, their officer dead or bleeding, and their tech compromised. She needed a place to disappear, and the surface wasn't safe. Then she remembered the old terraforming towers beyond the perimeter, still active, mostly automated. If she could get to one, she could reroute the data shard's contents to a high-atmosphere buoy. It was risky. No cover. But it was better than waiting to die underground. 10 minutes later, she emerged into Dagon 3's pale light. The atmosphere shimmered with static, dust devils spinning across the plains. The terraformer loomed on the horizon, a rusting, skeletal tower belching ozone into the dry wind. She sprinted. Behind her, a low rumble echoed from the base. Not engines. Not gunfire. A hunting roar. Rhea turned as something massive moved from the base, a Xal'tor assault drone, quadruped, armed with a rail cannon and close-range shredders. Their last card. Of course they had a damn drone. She vaulted into a trench, slid beneath collapsed fencing, and kept moving. The drone locked on, unleashing a burst of railfire that tore up the rock behind her. Dirt exploded, metal screamed. Her HUD flashed damage warnings. She ignored them. At the tower's base, she slammed a hand on the access panel. It buzzed. She ripped the casing off and hardwired the circuit. The door hissed open. She dove inside just as the drone fired again, the blast vaporized the outer shell. Inside, she limped up the spiral staircase. The interior was tight, steep, and poorly lit. She reached the top, slid into the main control chamber, and yanked the comms panel open. No encryption. No protection. Just open frequency routing and a direct uplink to orbit. Obsolete tech was finally useful. She plugged in the shard. The drone circled the base below, unsure where to strike. The upload began. Come on, come on. 2%, 6, 11. The drone's cannon swiveled upward. She ducked as the tower shook. Screamed. Steel groaned. A support beam cracked below her. 34%. She wedged herself against the wall and braced as another blast hit. Part of the roof tore away. Wind howled inside. 58. The drone prepared for another shot, but too late. The console pinged. Upload complete. Rhea didn't wait. She grabbed the shard, kicked open the emergency release hatch, and rappelled down the outside of the tower using a length of old power cable. The drone fired again, but she was already out of range, vanishing into the storm-choked dust. Hours later, aboard the stealth ship Vigilant Wind, she sat wrapped in a med cloak, sipping lukewarm broth as medics cleaned her wounds. Captain Dorn entered the bay holding a data slate. "You sent us everything," he said. "Coordinates. Orders. Names. Enough to light the entire outer rim on fire." Rhea's voice was quiet. "That's what they wanted to do to us. Dorn nodded. High Command's calling a war council. You'll be on that screen. She gave a faint, tired smile. Let them know this. One Terran scout walked into an elite Xal'tor operation and made it crawl home. High Warlord Skarn Vroth stood at the center of his war chamber aboard the Vengeance of Zaros, reviewing footage retrieved from Dagon 3. His elite unit, dead. His signal beacon, compromised. His drone, neutralized. Every calculated move had unraveled at the hands of a lone human operative. And worst of all, the Terran had vanished before they could reclaim the data. The hologram before him played on repeat. It showed a slim figure in charred black armor, sprinting across the plains toward a terraforming tower. Blood on her armor. A data shard in her hand. She was alone, Skarn growled, voice low and bitter. One scout. Silence from the gathered officers. No one dared speak. The warlord turned sharply, his voice rising. You told me humans were scattered. Untrained. Weak. He gestured toward the hologram, which froze on an image of Rhea at the tower's summit. That is not weakness. That is precision. Purpose. Defiance. He leaned over the control interface, claws tapping. And now they have everything. Our plans. Our routes. Our command signatures. Still, none of his warriors spoke. The consequences of failure under Skarn were legendary. Prepare the fleet, he said. If the humans want war. He stopped. Another officer entered, out of breath. Warlord, broadcast from Terran High Command. Uncoded. That got Skarn's attention. He nodded once. Show me. A new image flickered to life. The face of Admiral Voss, Earth's highest military authority, appeared. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned. To the Xal'tor Dominion, your incursion on Dagon 3 was not only a violation of treaty, but a declaration of intent. We have obtained evidence of your operations, provided by one of our forward recon officers. You know her. She's the reason you're missing a command team. Skarn's mandibles twitched. Effective immediately, Terran forces will assume combat readiness along the outer rim. Consider the treaty void. The feed cut. For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then Skarn slammed his fist into the control panel, sparks flying. One human, he said, almost to himself. We built an empire on the bones of weaker species. And one human has made us bleed. On board the Vigilant Wind, Rhea sat in the observation bay, the stars stretching endlessly beyond the viewport. She wore a clean uniform now, black with a silver insignia she'd never asked for. Recognition she didn't seek. But she couldn't deny what she'd done. Behind her, Boots approached. She didn't turn. You didn't want the ceremony, said Captain Dorn. She gave a short laugh. I didn't do it for a medal. He stepped beside her, arms crossed. You changed the balance out there. We were weeks from folding the Dagon line. Now we've got full authorization to mobilize. The outer rim is rallying. She shook her head. They're rallying because they're scared. Not just of the Xal'tor. Of what one of us did. Dorn gave her a sideways glance. They should be. You made an empire flinch. I improvised. I survived. That's all. He handed her a datapad. They're offering you a command. Special reconnaissance, deep ops. They want you training the next wave. She stared at the screen, didn't touch it. If I take that, she said quietly, I stop doing the work. I start teaching others to do what I'm still willing to do myself. Dorn didn't argue. He just let the silence settle. You made Skarn look weak, he said finally. You humiliated him. She nodded. That's what makes him dangerous now. Elsewhere, deep in Xal'tor space, Skarn gathered his inner circle in the sealed blackstone chamber beneath the High Temple. His claws rested on a ritual blade, polished and blood-stained. We made a mistake, he said, voice calm. We judged them by their technology, their diplomacy, their noise. He looked each of them in the eye. But we forgot one thing. The room was silent. They are predators. We just never gave them a reason to show their teeth. He raised the blade and cut his palm, a Xal'tor gesture of oath. Let the humans come. Let them think themselves feared. We will answer with extinction. Back on the Vigilant Wind, Rhea stood alone at the hangar bay, looking over the stealth shuttle assigned to her. Her armor was repaired, sleeker. Lighter. The scars beneath it, those she kept. Morgan, a young tech, called, jogging up. You left this. She turned as he held out a small metal tag, Xal'tor officer insignia. The one she'd taken from Valcor before leaving him in pieces beneath the base. She took it, weighted in her palm. Thanks, she said. I'll need a new one soon. The tech blinked. You're heading back out? She gave him a dry look. I'm human. We don't wait for round 2. We bring it. He didn't argue. As the shuttle ramp closed behind her, Rhea exhaled. The war was coming. But she wasn't afraid of what waited in the stars. The Xal'tor had seen one human scout and decided they'd seen enough. They had no idea how many more were ready.